So in this video, I will be going over my top 10 physical media releases for 2025. If you did not see my previous video, which was my top releases of 2024, these are in no particular ranked order, just sort of a general order that I chose, but they're not ranked. It's my general top 10 for this year, 2025. And I chose these from a combination of factors: what the films personally mean to me, sentimentality factor, best presentations ever, the extras, in some cases the packaging, though to a lesser extent. And if you didn't check out my recently posted best releases of 2024, that was just posted. Okay, and there will definitely be some in here that you're not going to see mentioned in 50 other videos. However, my first two picks here have been quite popular releases, so I'm going to be starting with those. And the first one is Warner's 4K box set of the original A Nightmare on Elm Street series 1 through 7. And I'll be showing that box set, although I didn't go for that one. It is a very cool looking set. When the pre-orders first went up on Amazon, you could not see what the steel books were going to look like. I think at the time they only showed you the red and green stripe sweater box. And I'm not the biggest Elm Street fan. It's not my number one franchise or anything. And I also didn't realize how few they had made and how quickly it would sell out. I just decided that's not the edition I would go for. I knew a cheaper standard edition was coming, and I used the 20% code that Groove always has, and I got the standard edition, which you'll see here, which is all the same disc content in a much lesser space footprint. And a lot of us longtime collectors with big collections, space is a factor. So that actually did factor into my decision, but you get, Elm Street 1 to 7. They added just a little bit of extras. Not much. This was one of the most requested upgrades for horror fans because the previous Blu-ray set was quite old. As far as the extras go, I still recommend people buy the Never Sleep Again documentary, which is multiple hours long. That combined with legacy features of the past covers extras pretty well as far as Elm Street goes. But I had to give it to the set, one of the biggest horror franchises finally getting the 4K treatment. It came later than, all the old Halloween movies getting 4Ks and Friday the 13th getting the great Shoutbox one a few years ago. But some of the Friday the 13th films still haven't gotten 4Ks. But now we have 1 through 7 Elm Street, which is all the ones that most people really care about. I think the remake's terrible, on 4K. So huge release. And my next pick is Arrow Video's 4K box set of the original 3 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles films. Another huge release, long requested by fans. The previous Blu-ray set of these was basically bare bones. The transfers were older transfers. Look fine for the time, but they were older transfers. There were no extras on that old Blu-ray set issued by the studio itself. Arrow did new restorations on 3 original live action films. They did tons of new interviews, filming locations, all sorts of little cards and posters in the set. They used the original theatrical teaser art. This is the exact set that I got. They did an alternate site exclusive art, which was more on the cartoon side, and I didn't care for that at all. I went with this old original art. But yeah, just a great release. It went from no extras to a ton of extras, extra physical goodies. Movies look the best they've ever looked. You know, and I'm in the age group. These are just classic action fantasy movies with great comedy. You know, always partial to the first one, but 2 and 3 are fun as well. And this was just a great set from Arrow Video, so it definitely made my list. And next we have Vinegar Syndrome's release of Mac and Me. So this was previously on Blu-ray from Shout. The Blu-ray had come out several years ago and looked fine. I did have that, but Vinegar Syndrome gives it the 4K upgrade. Great packaging. It got a big box, slip cover, the whole 9 yards. And they added extras. You get 2 commentaries, multiple new interviews with the director, with actors, with one of the alien puppeteers. You get the alternate ending, which was not on the old Shout disc. Yeah, you could find it on YouTube, but, you know, as collectors, we want these sort of things on the disc. YouTube stuff can disappear anytime. You know, it's not yours. Most cult movie fans will be familiar with this film, but it's from 1988. It's probably the most famous, you know, E.T. rip-off movie, but it's fun in its own right. It's incredibly cheesy and campy. I briefly talked about this because this was just in my Vinegar Syndrome Black Friday haul. It had come out last summer, but I waited till the Black Friday sale to pick it up with my subscriber discount. They had plenty of copies, so I wasn't worried about it selling out back in the summer. But yeah, just a classic campy sci-fi movie from the 80s. Looks better than ever. Additional extras. Great packaging from Vinegar Syndrome. So my next pick is going to be the Radiance Films release of Night of the Juggler from 1980, which I'll show a picture of right here. And this is the exact edition that I got. And it looks incredible. Everything about it. And I'm specifically mentioning the Radiance release because Kino Lorber in the US did release this on 4K first. However, in case you don't know, there's something wrong with the master they were given for their transfer, and there's a scene that loops a bit. They knew about it. They were told about it. They didn't fix it. They're never going to fix it. So it's a faulty transfer. As soon as I heard that, I decided I would pre-order the Radiance release, which was just recently sent out to everyone. It only came out a few weeks after the Kino. So if you're interested in this film at all, and I'll talk a little bit about it, because this is, it's starting to get better known because of these recent releases, but this is a film from 1980 that's filmed in New York City and stars James Brolin. And not giving anything away, all this stuff happens super early. It's basically a kidnap movie. His daughter is taken in New York City. You know, 1980 New York City, incredibly gritty and, you know, quite different in most areas than it is today. You know, if you've seen a lot of New York City movies from the 70s, early to mid 80s, you know, that 42nd Street grindhouse, sleazy, dirty, dangerous look and feel. This movie has that in spades. You know, his daughter gets kidnapped. He has to track her down, sort of, you know, Liam Neeson Taken style, you know, decades before those films. And great action sequences, great pacing, great foot chases. It's extremely well done. I've known of this film for many years. I never thought we would get a good edition of this. This film has been stuck on VHS since the 80s, as I mentioned with some of my other picks in this and my best of 2024 video. I had no expectation this would make it to HD even, let alone a 4K. And this Radiance released is fantastic. You get, I mean, this, remember guys, this is coming from VHS. So you get, this is all, you get new audio commentary with historians. There's a James Brolin interview. There's actress interview. And I believe there are some features on this Radiance release which are not on the Kino, including this locations tour, the filming locations. There's a visual essay, multiple visual essays. This is just a dream release for anyone who's known of this movie over the years and just never thought we would get a good edition of it. And definitely go with the Radiance. 4K is region free. Any Blu-ray content, maybe region B locked, but and I'll advocate this at other points in other videos. If you're a big collector, you should have a region free player of some sort, because there's a ton of stuff, particularly region B stuff, that we just never get over here in the US. And sometimes the region B release is better than what we get in the US. So it's important to be able to play back all of that. But yeah, that's Night of the Juggler from 1980. My next pick is Umbrella's release of Salute of the Jugger from 1989, which was known in the US as The Blood of Heroes. So what I'm going to show here was the Super Deluxe Collector's Edition, which Umbrella had put out. Now, I did not buy this specific edition. I have the standard with the nice slipcover still, and I'll show that as well in a second. But just to show how Umbrella went all out for this pretty forgotten 1989 action sci-fi film with Rutger Hauer. This is a great movie, and a lot of collectors that I watch on YouTube that were not familiar with it, I was explaining to them when this came out a few months back what this is, why they should care about it, and how cool this is. Because it's got that weird title, and it's just never had too much of a following, I don't think. And there'll probably never be a good US release of this for whatever weird rights reasons. But Umbrella went all out. You know, you get it on 4K. There's a 100-page book with behind the scenes and production notes. There's how to play the fictional sports game. There's posters. Or there's a poster. You get the work print cut. They did new interviews. There's a new audio commentary. There's new deleted scenes, which we've never gotten before. There's a blooper reel. And you also get the US cut called The Blood of Heroes, which is a cut down version of the movie that was released for the US. But if you've never seen the movie before, the way to go is the main Salute of the Jugger uncut version. But yeah, you get the other cut in there, which is always good. And some of these movies are going to be hard to explain, but this is an action sci-fi film. So this is a post-apocalyptic film. I don't quite remember what they say specifically happened to the world, but a lot of the film takes place in like a desert type setting. But the thing that puts this film, the element that this film shares with a film like Rollerball, is it's all based around a fictional futuristic sport. It's sort of like a combination of American football and rugby, but they use weapons, and they don't use a ball. If I'm recalling this right, I may be mistaken on some plot details of certain things here and there. They use like a skull, and you have to move the skull, you know, towards the other end of your opponent's playing field, and it's like 4 on 4, 5 on 5, and it's like people like hit each other, like legitimately name each other. They're fighting with, you know, chains and clubs and all kinds of stuff. And Rutger Hauer plays this sport, and it's uh, it's regulated, but there's like different levels. He's on like more of a rogue team that travels around through this desert area, and it's like a transient, almost carny lifestyle. But then there's like upper tiers to the Jugger League, which you see later on in the film, where it's like more like organized in this like high tech sort of battlefield. It's difficult to explain, but it's sort of like Mad Max crossed with Rollerball, and it's just a really cool movie. And Umbrella did such a good job with this release. The only way I even had it on HD before was there was a Japanese Blu-ray with practically no extras, and that's all I had for years. So it was great to upgrade this to Umbrella's 4K. And up next, we have The Last Shark from 1981. I really thought more people would talk about this after this came out. This was put out by Treasured Films in the UK, so not a US release. This is also known as Great White. This is one of the best Jaws ripoffs, and I can make the argument it's better than Jaws 3 and 4, certainly. In some respects, I think it betters Jaws 2. I'm not going to say it's better than Jaws, but it's great. This is an Italian, you know, great white killer shark movie. There's an actor, Vic Morrow, who basically plays the Quint character of Jaws. The grizzled old sea captain shark hunter guy, and he's like the best Quint you could hope for outside of the original Jaws. The practical effects in this are great. This blows every other Jaws ripoff of the 80s and 90s, especially the Italian ones, out of the water, literally. It's just so well done. The effects, the story, the characters. This is a Blu-ray, but this film has been stuck in shit quality, for ages. This is a Region B release. As I said, it's Treasured Films UK release. You get new audio commentary with Eugenio Ercolani, who, if you don't know, he does a ton of work on particularly Italian genre films for the American boutiques as well. A lot of the Italian Vinegar Syndrome releases, you'll see him in featurettes, doing the interviews with people, visual essays. He's one of the best and most knowledgeable guys about Italian genre cinema. His grandfather was a director, and one of the films in the Bloodstained Italy set from this year, his grandfather directed that film. So he's tied into all the backstory on these old Italian films. But you get new interviews with the actors. You get interview with the director, Enzo Castellari. There's visual essays on here. Just a great release that I wish would have come to more people's attention. But The Last Shark, just amazing to get this on Blu-ray. Highly recommended. If you're into the Jaws films or shark films at all, this is one of the best ones. Like, it will not disappoint. And my next pick is Arrow Video's release of Enemy Territory from 1987. This is another release that came out of nowhere. Stuck on VHS era film. To finally get this on Blu-ray was just great. So this is an action thriller that takes place in like the slums project area of New York City in the late 80s. And what it's about is this insurance salesman is told one day he needs to get this old lady's signature on some papers to secure some sort of policy, and there's some urgency for some reason, and she lives in a housing project in a really bad, rough neighborhood. So this guy has to go in there and try to get this signature, and I think he gets there kind of later in the day, and so it's not long before night falls, and he ends up crossing paths with this street gang called the Vampires. And interestingly, for horror fans, the leader of this street gang is actually a young Tony Todd, who uses the nickname The Count as the gang leader. And there's a couple other interesting names in the supporting cast. A couple people who help the insurance guy. Ray Parker Jr., who's probably best known for doing the original Ghostbusters theme, plays a telephone repairman. And Jan Michael Vincent is this Vietnam vet who also factors into the story. And this is just a really fun, well put together action thriller movie. I could sort of compare it, try to compare it to something that's maybe a bit more well known to people. Something like Judgment Night from the 90s with Emilio Estevez. Sort of like that. But this was just a great release from Arrow Video, and this was a UK only Region B release. So again, as I've said, if you're in the US looking to import this, you need to have region free capability for releases just like this. But yeah, great release from Arrow, Enemy Territory. And my next pick is MVD's release of Terminus from 1987. This is an obscure sci-fi film that I believe may have been a French production, but it stars Karen Allen from the old Indiana Jones films. Jürgen Prochnow is also in this. This is a really cool, interesting sci-fi film. MVD apparently just pulls one of these old gems out of nowhere. And this never even really got a US VHS release, I don't think. It's been like absent from the US market completely until this Blu-ray. So this takes place in the year 2030s. This movie is difficult to explain, but It's sort of like a futuristic race movie, sort of like Cannonball Run. There's a kid who's like a child genius, and he's on a certain racing team, and they're part of this cross country race, and the object is to get to what's called the end of the line. It's difficult to explain, but if you're into weird 80s sci-fi action, the music in this is cool. It has cool effects, good action scenes. If you haven't seen it, it's just hard to describe. And on this MVD release, you get the extended director's cut of the film, which is nearly 2 hours, and you also get the cut US version. I believe this did have some sort of US theatrical run, but it was cut by like 30 plus minutes. So you get both versions in this set, which is great. They have a new interview with Jürgen Prochnow. They have a making of Terminus featurette. They have archival interviews with the director. So there's good extras on here as well. And this was part of the MVD Rewind collection. So that's Terminus from 1987. And next, we have a VCI release. The seldom mentioned anymore VCI label. They put out Empire of the Dark from 1991. Perhaps one of my most dark horse obscure picks of this list. So Empire of the Dark is a lower scale film, but it's a lot of fun. It starts with a shootout of sorts, a shootout action scene in a supermarket, which sort of reminds me, because it's from the same era as the action film Stone Cold, which also opens with a great supermarket scene. There's something about, I love when 70s, 80s, 90s films have some sort of incident or action scene in the old supermarkets, and you see, you know, a lot of old products, some of which don't exist anymore, the old packaging, the way, you know, some of us grew up with it, and just seeing crazy shit happen in all grocery stores. I always like when that happens in movies. But anyway, this movie stars Steve Barkett and Richard Harrison, and Steve Barkett also did a film in the early 80s called The Aftermath, which was also put out by VCI, which is another interesting post-apocalyptic science fiction action thing. But anyway, the main story of this is this detective is searching for a killer, and he encounters a cult from another dimension and has to fight them. So it's basically a cult movie, and there's some occult and supernatural elements to it. It has some surprising, fun special effects, monster effects, stop motion stuff, which I'm a big fan of. And it's from the early 90s, but it feels older. It feels like a movie that could have come out like early to mid 80s. It feels like if you're familiar at all with the Vinegar Syndrome homegrown regional horror line, it feels a lot like that. It's ambitious, but you know they had very little resource, but it still manages to be fun and entertaining. And like with many on this list, I had no expectation this would ever get a Blu-ray, because we're so, you know, far along in Blu-ray being a thing. So when these older films make their Blu-ray debut of this level of obscurity, you know, it's always a pleasant surprise. And this is a great pick. There are extras on here with the star. Steve Barkett, who also wrote and directed it. Him and his brother, Chris, who worked with him on a lot of his films. You get commentary track. There's a podcast interview, film festival interview. There's a couple short films on here. So you get a bunch of extras. And this is just one of those obscure hidden gems. So Empire of the Dark makes the list. And my last pick for the top releases of 2025, we have a full moon release of Crash and Burn from 1990. So this was one of my most wanted vintage full moon productions. This is an action sci-fi movie that again takes place in the future. This one takes place in the far off year of 2030, which as of today is no longer very far off at all. And it has to do with the climate of the Earth being permanently altered from the diminished ozone layer. So I think it's hot all the time. And there's like a mega evil corporation that has sort of taken over the world economy. And but the setup is more small scope, obviously, because this is an early 90s full moon film, but it's almost like a Night of the Living Dead type setup. It's really centers on this small group of people at this isolated remote desert location, and they're like dissenters from everything that's going on. This is directed by Charles Band and stars Bill Moseley. And there's a new audio commentary with them in it. And there's also a making of on this Blu-ray. But just to finally get this on Blu-ray after years of it being stuck on DVD, there's also elements of other similar full moon stuff, like the Robot Jocks films. There's a cool giant robot in this film. And, they did such fun stop motion work back then. So Crash and Burn is a cool sci-fi action film. I highly recommend if you're a fan of old school full moon stuff. It was just great to get this released. And that'll do it for my top 10 physical media releases of 2025.